What's going on, guys? It's your boy John the Liquidator coming back with an explosive story. This is news you can use and news you really need to listen to. Now, with that being said, we know Shedeur Sanders is currently battling it out with Deshaun Watson. Now, originally, I thought the Browns was ultimately going to tank this season. After more information is starting to come out, I don't believe that's the case. Now, do I believe Shedeur Sanders got a chance to start this year?
The Cleveland Browns are not tanking this season, and Shedeur Sanders is the reason why. Not because the front office decided it, because Shedeur Sanders walked into minicamp and took that decision completely out of their hands. And here's what makes this complicated. Every signal coming out of Cleveland 3 weeks ago pointed toward a tank. The Brennan Sorsby rumors, the quarterback uncertainty, the way ownership kept pushing Watson. 4 reporters in 3 days, all pointing toward a rebuild. The entire NFL world had already written this season off. Then, something happened in the final weeks of OTAs that nobody predicted, and Kay Cabot, the most connected reporter in Cleveland, just told you exactly what it was. Most people heard it and moved on. I didn't. By the time this is over, you are going to understand why the tank narrative just collapsed, why Shedeur Sanders is now the most important player on this entire roster, and why the one condition that determines his starting job is something only he controls. Stay with me, because this is the part nobody else is covering.
Well, I think what happened is Shedeur Sanders came on so strong in those last probably 3-4 weeks of OTAs and minicamp that he made it impossible for them to go out there and make a decision right now. I think he kind of just put his nose to the grindstone and really studied that offense and got out there and did what he needed to do at the line of scrimmage more so than he did in the beginning. When it came to the operation of the offense, he became way more.
There is a specific kind of pain that only Cleveland Browns fans understand. It is the pain of almost believing and then watching it fall apart before it ever started. It is the pain of a franchise that has spent 20 years cycling through quarterbacks the way other teams cycle through backup running backs, always searching, never finding, always finding a reason why this next guy is different. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be different. $130 million guaranteed said he was different. And then the injuries came, and then the performances didn't, and then the crowd went quiet on a Sunday afternoon in a way that said everything without saying a word. Not angry, not loud, just done. And in the rubble of that decision, a 5th-round pick from Colorado quietly showed up. He won 2 games at the end of a season that was already lost. He threw the ball with a confidence that had been absent from that stadium for years, and the fans, the same fans who had stopped caring, leaned forward again, just a little, just enough to wonder. That wonder is fragile. Cleveland fans know better than to trust it. They have been here before, but it is there. And right now, in the final weeks before training camp, everything depends on whether one 22-year-old can protect it. The wound is still open. Shedeur Sanders is either the thing that finally closes it, or the next chapter in the same long story of almost.
Roseby. Then you have another Cleveland reporter and another NFL analyst stated, I'm hearing they really don't want to go deal with sports gambling baggage that Skrosby would bring with him for now. The Browns are content to watch Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson battle for the start of the season. Y'all see that? The content as of right now is Shedeur and Deshaun Watson battling it out.
Kay Cabot does not use words carelessly. She has been covering this franchise long enough to know the difference between a player who is developing and a player who is performing. And when she was asked directly what happened over the final weeks of OTAs and minicamp, she did not say Shedeur Sanders looked good. She said he made it impossible for them to make a decision. Those are not the same thing. A player who looks good gets noted. A player who makes it impossible to look away gets started. She said he put his nose to the grindstone, that he studied the offense, that he became way more efficient going through his progressions, getting rid of the ball, his footwork, all of the things you need to operate this offense. And then she said something that most people glossed over entirely. She said they really want to see what he can do when the pads come on. That phrase, really want to see, is not neutral organizational language. That is anticipation. That is a coaching staff that has already seen enough to be excited about what comes next. The Brennan Sorsby narrative did not disappear, it shifted. The same reporters who were saying the Browns would definitely bid on Sorsby are now saying the Browns are content to watch Shedeur and Watson battle it out. Content. That word is doing enormous work in that sentence. A franchise that is tanking is not content. A franchise that is tanking is actively engineering outcomes. Content means they like what they see. Content means the internal conversation has moved in a direction they did not expect 3 weeks ago. October 26, 2024, Shedeur Sanders against Brennan Sorsby Cincinnati team. 25 of 30 completions, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, plus a rushing touchdown. Colorado won that game 34-23. The player the Browns are being told to tank for, the player everyone says is the better prospect, lost to Shedeur Sanders head-to-head, on the field, with the outcome on the line. Numbers do not have agendas, they just tell you what happened. If the Browns were really tanking, if this was all a plan to lose and get a high draft pick, why would they need to feed Sorsby stories to the media at all? Think about that. Teams that are tanking do not manage narratives, they just lose. The fact that someone inside Cleveland is carefully placing Sorsby stories into the media ecosystem means they are managing something. And what they are managing is the possibility that Shedeur Sanders starts and wins and makes the whole tank conversation irrelevant. That is not a tank. That is insurance.
To it.
I know you guys are all perfect and live by the Mother Teresa ways of the world, but how many 18-year-olds make really bad decisions? And there is never any integrity of the game violations. Everybody loves to have an opinion, and I'm so tired of watching people get on TV and blab their mouth when they have no idea what they're talking about. And unfortunately, it's not just in Brendan's situation, it's in most situations. And unless you're Brendan or Brendan's family or myself and my team, nobody really.
What is happening inside Shedeur Sanders right now is one of the most psychologically complex situations a young quarterback can face, and most people are completely missing it. He came into Cleveland as a 5th-round pick. The narrative around him was shaped before he threw a single pass. Questions about his father's influence, questions about his draft fall, questions about whether he was a system product or a genuine starter. That is an identity threat layered on top of an identity threat. Most players shrink under that weight. They get quiet. They start playing not to fail instead of playing to win. Shedeur Sanders did the opposite. His pressure signature through OTAs and minicamp was not shrinking, it was expanding. He got louder on the practice field, not quieter. He studied more, not less. He attacked the parts of his game the coaches flagged, his footwork, his progressions, his operation at the line of scrimmage, with a focus that the QB coach described as refreshing. That word matters. Refreshing means unexpected. It means the coaching staff came in with calibrated expectations, and Shedeur exceeded them before the pads even came on. His perceived locus of control is fully internal. He believes this outcome is his to determine, and that belief is contagious in a locker room. 52 other men are watching how the quarterback handles pressure in June, because June tells you everything about September. The organization's psychology is the most revealing piece. 3 weeks ago, they were showing pure hedge behavior, keeping the Sorsby door open, refusing to name a starter, letting the tank narrative breathe. Now the language is shifting. Mary Kay is using words like, they really want to see what he can do. That is not hedge behavior anymore. That is the early stage of commitment behavior, and commitment behavior from a front office does not reverse without a catastrophic reason. Shedeur Sanders is the only person who can stop Shedeur Sanders now. That is not a motivational phrase. That is the organizational reality of where this competition currently stands. But to understand why this matters, we have to go back to the moment the tank narrative was born. It started with the Sorsby reports, 4 Cleveland media voices in 3 days, all pointing to the same player. And at the time, the read was, the Browns are done with this quarterback room, and they are already planning their exit. That was the logical interpretation. It made sense, given the Watson situation, given the cap, given the draft positioning. But here's what nobody considered. What if the Sorsby narrative was not a tank signal? What if it was a pressure test? What if someone inside that building wanted to see how Shedeur Sanders responded when the organization publicly dangled his replacement in front of the entire NFL world? Because what happened next, the final weeks of OTAs, the minicamp performance, the efficiency jump Mary Kay described, happened after the Sorsby story started circulating, not before, after. Pressure reveals character, and Shedeur Sanders just showed this franchise exactly who he is under maximum pressure.
Shedeur versus Scrolsby, October 26, 2024. Shedeur Sanders threw 25 of 30, 323 touchdowns. 23 yards, my apologies. 2 touchdowns, 0 interception, and he rushed for a touchdown. Scrolsby, 16 of 30, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Colorado Buffaloes won that game 34-23. Just to give you a little clarity on this entire situation, I truly believe Shedeur's going to get an opportunity.
Read the organizational language from the last 2 weeks, and something becomes very clear very fast. The tank narrative is dead. Not because the Browns chilled it publicly. They did not. It is dead because the internal energy has shifted, and that shift is leaking into every media interaction coming out of Cleveland right now. Mary Kay Cabot is the most plugged-in reporter on this beat. When she says Shedeur made it impossible for them to make a decision, she is not speculating, she is translating. That phrase, impossible to make a decision, means the coaching staff came into minicamp expecting Watson to hold a clear advantage and left minicamp no longer certain of that. The decision they wanted to make got blocked by a performance they did not expect. Tony Garcia said there is no doubt in his mind the Browns will bid on Sorsby, and then another analyst said they really do not want to deal with the gambling baggage and are content to watch Shedeur and Watson babble it out. 2 reporters, 2 completely different directions, both with sources inside Cleveland. That conflict does not happen by accident. That is a front office that is genuinely divided, or a front office that is letting multiple narratives run simultaneously to protect their options. When Andrew Berry lets contradictory narratives run without correction, what he is actually saying is, we are not ready to close any doors yet, but the door that is opening fastest right now has Shedeur Sanders' name on it. The Sorsby Pro Day is July 10th. The Browns will be there. But the fact that they are going to a Pro Day does not mean they are drafting the player. Sometimes you go to a Pro Day to confirm what you already suspect. Sometimes the confirmation is that the player you already have is the right answer. That is not a coincidence. Organizations do not send scouts to pro days for players they have already decided against, but they also don't let a 5th-round pick ball out in minicamp and then pretend they didn't see it. Think about this from Andrew Berry's point of view for a second. You have a $42 million mistake on your roster. You have a fan base that has stopped trusting this front office. You have a coaching staff that wanted a starter named before training camp and did not get one. And you have a 5th-round pick who just forced his way into a conversation he was never supposed to be in. What do? You do not announce anything. You do not close doors. You let the competition play out in training camp with live bullets and full pads and real pressure. Because if Shedeur Sanders does what he did in minicamp when the hits are real and the stakes are real, you don't need to make a decision. The decision makes itself. And then you are not the general manager who benched the $42 million quarterback. You're the general manager who found a franchise player in the 5th round. That is a completely different legacy, and Andrew Berry knows exactly what it means. There are 53 men in that building who came into this offseason with 0 quarterback certainty and leaving minicamp with something they did not expect to feel. Not confidence exactly, something more fragile and more powerful than that. Curiosity.
The kind of curiosity that makes a locker room lean in. The kind that makes veterans take a young quarterback seriously before they have earned it on a national stage. That energy is already there. You can hear it in the way Cleveland media is describing the facility atmosphere. Something shifted, and the 53 men who have to go to war in September felt it before anyone outside that building did. Here is the call, and I am making it clean. If Shedeur Sanders starts Week 1 for the Cleveland Browns and plays the way he played in the final weeks of OTAs and minicamp, this team wins 9 games, maybe 10. They are not a Super Bowl team yet, but they are a playoff conversation team. And a playoff conversation with Shedeur Sanders at 22 years old is worth more to this franchise than a top 5 pick with a tank season attached to it. The math is not close. 5 years from now, one of 2 things will be true about this summer. Either Andrew Berry is celebrated as the general manager who trusted a 5th-round pick when the entire NFL said he was wrong and built a dynasty around that decision, or he is remembered as the man who had Shedeur Sanders in minicamp, watched him do everything right, and still chose the safe political option because $42 million made the other choice feel too embarrassing to make. History does not grade you on the reason. It grades you on the result. And the result of this summer is being written right now.
We started with a claim that the Browns are not tanking, and what you have just seen, the Mary Kay confirmation, the minicamp performance, the organizational language shift, the Sorsby narrative cooling in real time, proves it. This is not a tank. This is a franchise at a crossroads, and Shedeur Sanders just grabbed the steering wheel because underneath all of it, underneath the Sorsby rumors and the Watson contract and the tank theories and the draft positioning, there is a 22-year-old kid who came into the most skeptical football city in America as a 5th-round pick with his father's last name and a chip the size of the whole state of Ohio on his shoulder, and instead of wilting under the weight of all of it, he put his head down in the final weeks of minicamp and became something the Cleveland Browns have not had in a very long time. He became someone they cannot ignore, not because of his draft status, not because of his name, because of what he did when nobody expected him to do it. That is the rarest thing in professional football, and Cleveland is about to find out if they are brave enough to bet on it. So here's what I need to know from you. If Shedeur Sanders goes into training camp and outplays Deshaun Watson with pads on and live bullets, does Todd Monken have the courage to name him the starter over a $42 million contract, or does the money win again? Because those are the only 2 options, and only one of them changes the future of this franchise. Drop it below. I am reading every single comment.